Husserl's view, we cannot experience another's mind directly. If we did, we would be them. Therefore, we understand others via analogy and transference, assuming they are like us. Right, but once again, this assuming they are like us is not just a rational thing we're doing. Like, the scope of what's happening here is not just me thinking that they're like us. It's something that I'm predisposed to think at like an unconscious level as well, given our DNA and my entire life of learning and change and neuroplasticity, all leads me to a very internalized belief that other people are like me and that I have some sense of what other people are thinking based on their behavior. That would be closer to Husserl's view, that we wouldn't be able to grasp. We can't even grasp our own mind in some coherent sense or some intelligible sense. Like we certainly couldn't grasp another's mind. All right, Ayer's view rejects the idea that other minds are unobservable entities hidden behind behavior. According to Ayer's verificationalism, if a mind were truly unobservable, claiming it exists would be a meaningless metaphysical hypothesis. Right, it would be, right? Isn't the downstream of this is that it's meaningless to even recognize yourself as a meaningful metaphysical hypothesis? That's the whole point of, a lot of these Eastern traditions, and we're pretty much going to point out, be careful with the types of things that you assume yourself to be, because that will affect whether or not you feel like you can do that in the future and whatnot. Like, don't be too constraining with your own self-understanding. Granted, we do need some sort of self-understanding. Not only we don't have a choice, but we can leverage it pragmatically to affect our lives. Like my understanding that I know that I can do certain things, that I can sit down here and I could do this stream. Like that's an important part of my self-understanding, that even though it's inappropriate in some Eastern sense, it's still helping me out as far as I'm concerned when I think about it right now. Pog, when we see similarity, we assume similarity. That's what's going on. When we see similarity, yeah, but there's a lot behind when we see similarity, we assume similarity. There's a lot of complexity to that. So the idea is that our understanding of what is similar is still contingent upon our cultural understanding, what we had for breakfast this morning, our learning throughout our entire life, our dispositions, our personality, like all of this stuff affects what we believe to be similar in this moment. So it feels similar. When we see similar, we assume similar is actually the same thing just said twice as far as predictive processing is concerned. I think our most contemporary neuroscience points out that both of those are the same action here. We are seeing the prediction. This gets into this idea of priors. So, we can think about priors as what we're predisposed to experience right now. That will be the assumption. The assumption is similarity. But that assumption isn't it's not something that we rationally come up with right now. It's something that's been conditioned. So when I see someone and I see them say something and I assume that they mean it what they just said because I know that they're an honest person, like that's something that's afforded by a long history of learning and everything that affects my thoughts right now. It's not just my rational thinking right in this moment. Now I can post hoc try to rationalize why I think what they're thinking, and what I'm going to have to do then is presuppose a lot of concepts that I'm going to communicate, and those are also internalized. Husserl, the type of guy to make a philosophical statement and then go about his day. What a guy. Is that not what we're doing here? Sure it does. If we had to negotiate everything, it would be impossible to accomplish anything. It depends what we mean by negotiate. Like we can consider that what we're doing in even this scenario right now is we're negotiating in some sense. We're negotiating about meaning, you could think. But we don't have to negotiate about all meaning. So it's not like we have a problem, I'm not like constantly banning people in the chat because they're, going crazy. Like there's some sense of an understanding of how we behave. And the fact that people are here at least shows that I'm not an insane person that is just going to come on here and blast music through my iPhone on the microphone. Like you probably wouldn't watch if that was my contribution to the negotiation. If I was just blasting Lady Gaga on my old phone. Okay, I assume that when I see a person, they have feelings like me, but I have no reason to believe that. Outside of them appearing to be like me, if I recognize the words they speak, I assume that they are even more like me. Yeah. I mean, that's a way to conceptualize what's going on there. I again agree, but this is not metaphysically relevant, or am I missing something? Yeah, so like we're trying to make a case that's very deep down, like the fundamental case, which I'm trying to do via predictive processing and the theory of mind around that type of discussion. So I think what science points out to us, and logic, is that we are conditioned to believe that we are like each other, because that is how successful societies. That is what led to successful societies, like in like an evolutionary sense. The culture and the biology kind of evolved together. That goes into the Baldwin effect. And so when we see a society today where we all kind of understand these things about each other, like that is a huge aspect of nature and nurture. But like you could point out the significant aspect of nature that's involved when you point out the baby. I forget if it was like a 15-month-old, maybe it was from the discussion a few days ago. The 15-month-old was able to show some signs of identifying or at least identifying the intentions of adults in the room. So it did seem like this is so ingrained in nature that young children can understand other people's intentions at a visceral level. But once again, when we say like understand their intentions, what we mean is like react to them in some meaningful way, not that they actually like grasp the intention in some holistic way. To my understanding, Husserl's view is that we infer other people are conscious, but we can't access their internal mental states. Whereas to my understanding, Ayer's view is that we both infer other people are conscious and can access their internal mental states through observing their behavior. So yeah, this could come down to some type of semantic issue where we have to now define what it means to access someone else's internal states. And if it just means pragmatically responding to them responding to them in a certain way, such that it looks like that, I am doing something specific because of what signal you're releasing, then yeah, Ayer's right here. But if we mean in some like way where we like grasp their internal states, then we can't say that's the case. Once again, we can't even grasp our own intentions in the moment. We could try to figure out our own intentions, even on our best intention. Mindfulness shows that even our intention of staying focused on our breath does not lead us to stay focused on our breath. We lose, like anyone that starts out in mindfulness realizes how difficult it is to will their way into just focusing on the breath. Okay, so according to, if minds were truly unobservable, claiming it exists would be meaningless. Okay, yeah, so this is going to come down to some type of semantic discussion, and we just have to figure out what we're trying to say by being precise and by giving and asking for reasons. Therefore, other people must be defined by their empirical manifestations, behavior and sense content. Yeah, must be defined. Look at that. This is pointing to the semantic side of this discussion, not by a hidden life accessible only to them. So yeah, it's an argument over whether we should prioritize the phenomenology or should we prioritize the stimuli, but even that's incoherent. So both sides of this are somewhat incoherent in some sense, but maybe not incoherent, but unintelligible, I should say. Okay, the author praises Ayer for demonstrating that the problem of other minds is a pseudo-problem. It is logically malformed to ask about something that essentially exceeds possible experience. If a being appears to be conscious to me, it is nonsensical to worry about whether they are actually conscious inside, because that inside is unverifiable. The outside is effectively unverifiable to some extent, given that each person has a subjective understanding of the world. And this is why we come up with aggregation mechanisms such as voting, or just such as discussion that allow us to come to an agreement on something, or not an agreement, but just come to a consensus somehow. So what does it mean for us to understand a person? There's so each of us will have many different subjective understandings about that person. It's very difficult to come up to this idea of having a full grasp of them. That said, pragmatically, we could come up with similar things where, like, if all of us looked at someone who was wearing a red shirt, we would probably all say red shirt unless, one of us were colorblind. And even though I am colorblind, at least I would identify red.